by the rivers of Babylon. Yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying. Oh,
Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome to another Tanakh review. Another Torah review. My name is Zurishaddai. I'm one of the teachers of Congregation BINAH CHOKMAH, located at 382 Hamilton Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. Phone number 347-622-9090. Welcome to, like I said earlier, another Tanakh review. And I hope that everyone has had a great week. An early Shabbat Shalom to all out there. And I pray that the Creator of heaven and earth be with you all. First and foremost, giving glory to the Most High for all things and everything, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And giving glory to his name for being who he is, the great King of the universe, Yehudah. At this time, I'm going to give due respect to the leadership of the place, even my brother, the spiritual leader, Chief Prince Yisrael Ben Yissaskar, that the Most High God be with him, his family, his household, that the Creator continue to be with all of our brothers and sisters here and abroad. And I pray that the Creator of heaven and earth blesses us all. So we're going to go over the Haftarah for Wed Canaan, and to go over the portion, I will call up one of my teachers and my mentors, even and my mentor, even Nasik, Zurishaddai Ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Great. Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. Due respect to the platform I'm on, the D.C.B. platform channel, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Yisrael Ben Yissaskar, and to the host, Chief Uzel Ben Lewi, and to the princes, Chief, Kohanim, the rabbinate, Maureen, brothers and sisters and visitors, I greet you all. And the tongue of my forefathers, the early Shabbat Shalom and Shalom Aleichem. I'd like to first say, Adonai Septati Takupi Yagi Tirateka, O Lord, down my lips and my mouth declare praise. I'll be going over Wa'et Canaan, which Wa'et Canaan means, and he besought the Lord. It's talking about Moses besought. In the Haftarah, we had an interesting weekend, pretty much, Shabbat that just passed, because the Shabbat just passed is called the Shabbat Nakamu, which means a Shabbat of comfort. And that's Wa'et Canaan is usually read right after, Tisha B'Av, or somewhere close by there all the time. Depends on how calendar year is. And that's usually the Tisha B'Av is always very close behind it. And read at that particular time. And it's because we had 3 Haftarahs of admonishment, ammunition, as they say, against what we was doing wrong. And then it starts 7 weeks from Tisha B'Av, after Tisha B'Av, of 7 Haftarahs of comfort, total of 10. And one of those Haftarahs is usually read up on Yom Kippur. What's interesting that I find, and then Wa'et Canaan itself, it will start, for those that might not be familiar with when we say Sidra or Pashios, it starts in Deuteronomy, the third chapter, 23rd verse, and it goes to Deuteronomy, the 7th chapter, the 11th verse. In the Haftarah I'll be reading later on, which will be Isaiah, the 40th chapter, first verse going to the 26th, for hence the name come, Shabbat Nakamu. Also, within that time, not only we have what they call Tu B'Av, which is the 15th of Av within that month. And that's usually a month that's used on, I guess you would say, in Israel, celebrated as a day for, getting married and stuff like that, meeting your loved ones, your soulmate. That's been a tradition. Those might want to go back and look at it. I say it that way so it won't be, confused with other things that we might relate to. But that's an interesting time, and also they got a lot of rabbinic traditions about that goes on around near the 15th of 15th of Av, which they refer to as Tu B'Av. Not to be confused with Tisha B'Av, which is the 9th of Av, when we had the destruction of both temples at the time. So whereas the first temple, we destroyed because we had a lot of idol worshiping. Second temple pretty much destroyed because it caused us hatred. After that, we have a thing of comfort, and usually you comfort one of their soulmate. So, it become a time of love and comfort and reacquainting oneself. So, excuse me. So I like to go into just read a couple of things. I'll be pretty brief this particular time. I know it's a little bit loquacious last time. And it starts off in the 23rd verse of the 3rd chapter of Deuteronomy. And it said, "And I besought the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, thou hast begun to show thy servant thy greatness and thy strong hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth that can do according to thy works and according to thy mighty acts? Let me go over, I pray thee, and see the good land that is beyond the Jordan, that goodly hill country, and Lebanon. But the Lord was wroth with me for your sake, and hearkened not unto me. And the Lord said unto me, Let it suffice thee, speak no more unto me of this matter. Get thee up unto the top of Pisgah, and lift up thine eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward, and behold with thine eyes. But thou shalt not go over this Jordan, but charge Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which thou shalt see. So we abode in the valley over against Beth Peor." That's, they say, similar to the spot where they had that last big sin with the Midianites, and they turned away from God at that particular time. But what I find intriguing is that where Elkanah, the root word is Cain, Chait Nun. Chait Nun, when he said he resort, Cain is like a grace. So one of the things is that when Moses didn't use none of his accolades to claim, well, you called me out of my comfort zone, told me to go back down there and rescue these people. I did. I even, risked my life by standing before them in the matter of the golden calf. That I did. I prayed for the people oftentimes. That I did. And he didn't use none of those. All the things he told me to do, that I did, except for that one. So now, one of the things is that they use the term, the gematria for Ekanon. They used to, they come up to a number of numerical value, 550. And traditionally, they say that Moses prayed 515 times, just from the using the letters in the Hebrew for the word Ekanon. And you say, well, sometimes 515 times. How many times would I pray for the same thing? How many times would I ask for the same thing? Until I cannot ask anymore if it's dear enough to me and dear enough to my heart. I will continue to ask. We read when the people asked for a king not too long ago, we read that Samuel said he prayed, would pray, if it would not cease from praying for the people of Israel. So, that's saying you're going to do a lot of praying. But since Moses didn't use his accolades, didn't use his resume, and then the Creator still turned him down, then I beg to ask the question, all right? I want you to accent your command about not allowing me into the land. And the Creator told him not even to bring it up anymore. So what I find so sad about it, that Moses talked to another generation of people, and a few other people know Moses' background from the beginning of Egypt all the way out of Egypt, but the generation of 20 and upward, they died out already at this particular time. And God told Moses not to ask for it and petition anymore. But he never told the people not to pray for Moses. So can you imagine millions of people there that Moses looked out for? And the heart-wrenching thing that got to hit him is that no one said, well, God told you not to pray. Let me see if my prayer could ascend before the throne of mercy. That's why I find it one of the most saddest things for a leader of that magnitude to share his heart with the people and refuses at that particular time, to give up prayer to God's sake, for him not let this suffice. So that's some of the things I find. So maybe, the discussions and the further discussion for those that follow certain traditions, believing that, the Garden of Eden, that the world to come, ha'olam haba, as they say in Hebrew, that death is not the end for those that follow that particular tradition or understand that tradition. You say, okay. Oh, it is? Okay. All right. If there has such an issue about those people at the time would not begin to pray for them, and when we talk about the garden and the world, those that believe in the world to come, that you enjoy all the pleasures in the world to come, rewards and punishments, and the final analogy. If you believe that the world to come, you're going to have all the pleasures that won't even amount up to this world. If you believe in that doctrine, then why, if that thing exists with most mainstream rabbinic sources, and Israelites, believe, then why would Moses worry about staying in a land where he had to work it? And but some of the things is that he had laws that he taught that he could not implement. He had laws that was only in theory, but not practiced. And then after you make a transition from this world, you cannot show the Creator how strong any further, how devoted any further you are to him if you make transition. Only in this world, you could constantly show the Creator how much you're going to serve him, how much you love him, how much you want to, how close you want to be with him. So that is one of the areas that, and you also be able to bring a lot more sanctity to this world only by living in this world and crossing over into the land of Israel. Well, one prophet was told one time when he was prophesying to the northern kingdom, he said, look, if you want to prophesy, you better go back to Jerusalem. Don't come up there and prophesize with us. So those are some of the takeaways that I find that was really heart-wrenching. And then when you say about, I was talking to one young lady and about his failure at the rock. When he took the staff from before the ark, and it's told the one he smoked the river with, which we read in a couple of sidros ago, and the one that he parted the Yam Suf with, he took the staff, and yet he was told, him and Aaron, to speak to the rock. Why is it that he didn't, he took the staff in the first place. What was the purpose of the staff? And I mentioned at that time, would it have been a setup or not? What was the purpose of having that staff? And then if he did spoke to the rock, and the rock listened to what Moses had said. Hence, Moses wouldn't have violated at that point. But what would it said about the people who didn't want to hear God at Mount Sinai, 40 years ago? They didn't want to hear the voice of God and said, Moses, Moses, speak thou with us, but let not God speak with us, lest we die. Then what would be the consequences that the rock, an inanimate object, would listen to the words of a man as commanded by the creator of heaven and earth? And yet we, who also God rescued and chose and did so much for, say we don't want to hear the voice of God, but we will listen to the voice of a man, and we didn't listen to him at all times. So those are some takeaways that, we might want to, discuss amongst the different membership. All right. Then as you move fast forward, in the 4th chapter, it talks about, and now, O Israel, hearken to the statutes and to the ordinances which I teach you to do them, that you may live and go and possess the land which the Lord thy God, which the Lord, the God of your fathers, giveth you. All right, now, we ourselves, all right, we become a nation, not like other nations. Other nations, people get together, they get them a land. And when they get them a land, then they say, we're going to come up with some laws how to live on this land. We, on the other hand, as the nation of Israel, became a people, became a nation through laws before we became a nation with land. And that is more of the high road and things, that we had laws. So what makes us a nation is not the land, like other people. All the other nations in the world are made and recognized as a nation according to the land. We are looked at and acknowledged as a nation according to the Torah that Moses brought down from Mount Sinai and that he taught us for them 40 years. So through our laws, statutes, and judgments, that's what make us a nation, not the land. So we are a unique people, a peculiar people and a unique people. So when we look at further in that area, and it goes on, and that's the only way we can live in that land is by doing these laws. And in the 2nd verse, it says, you shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall you diminish from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. All right. Now, some people run real strong with this. You should not add or diminish. But then you could never, ever, live life to the fullest in every time zone. Because when they talk about not adding or not diminishing, it means in the natural core sense of the text that is given, that's written in the natural core sense. But when we read the scriptures, it don't deal with certain things like commerce. It don't deal with certain types of damages. We talk about an ox going another ox, or ox, and when he kills another ox, and the ox died, the owner of the ox should sell that lived, that killed, go with the other ox. We have a law where you sell that ox if you've been known to go on past times. I mean, you sell the ox rather, and then after you sell the ox, you divide the dead ox. But now we got a car collision, automobile collision. Then what do we do in a case like that? Your vehicle hit this other guy's vehicle. Your vehicle might have been a truck. his vehicle might be a little bitty small car. Your vehicle might sustain a little dent. His vehicle might have got knocked into a column or off the road and off the side of a cliff, and it got totaled. So how do we divide a total vehicle and sell a good vehicle and talk about equity? Or when we talk about an eye for eye, tooth for a tooth. Here's a man that had both his eyes, but one of them is a blind eye. And here's another man that has two eyes, and both of them are good eyes. And the one with the good eyes hits a blind man in that blind eye and destroy that blind eye. But this guy couldn't see already. So do we take his eye of the good man who had two good eyes, and the blind man had one good eye, and the blind that was lost was the one that couldn't see with anyway? Are we going to make him blind in that eye? Completely blind where he wasn't blind before? So you have to have things where you have to deal with those different items in law, over a period of time. So the law is supposed to be, a thing where it grows with us, or else it would be never a such thing that we find multiple terms, like it says, there would be a controversy between blood and blood, plead and plead, which we have some new laws that we will come through later on. Then she'll go to the judges, the priests, the Levites, the judges that shall be in those days. So if we got to go in those days, that means that certain things we're going to read today may not apply. We have so much stuff going on with technology these days, and so many new things that that's not even covered in the book. So when they talk about don't add or diminish, that means right then, and if you add certain things, you might make the law too severe of observance where people may not even want to observe it. And if you diminish too much, then it only become an applicable law at all. So it has to be a balance struck. So it's a lot of things to discuss and what actually that verse means. And when we go just a little bit further there, you hear it goes on to say in the third verse, you have seen what the Lord did in Baal Peor. For all the men that followed the Baal Peor, the Lord thy God has destroyed them from the midst of thee. But ye that did cleave unto the Lord your God are alive, every one of you this day. Now, the word that he used in this particular verse, for cleave, they use the word, hadavekim. But that's the same word they use, davak, in the book of Genesis, when a man cleave to his wife. They use that same word, davak, which is the man, when a man leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife. So that word is used there, and that same word is used here. So it's not just enough for us to reverence the Lord, reverence God and observe the laws of God, but we must also try to cleave to God, become one with God, and in a strong relationship like a man and a woman in that kind of relationship. So that's why Moses emphasized here, to remind you of those things. So then one more thing I'm going to cover in this here, and then I'm going straight to the Haftarah. But it's a lot of things in this particular Sidra. Well, maybe two more things. It says in 6th verse, observe therefore to do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, that when they hear all these statutes, shall say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. All right. So one of the great things about this here people always say, well, I can't get people to believe in God. I can't get people to believe in God. I try to tell them about this God. I try to tell them about, who I worship and everything like that. Who you worship won't strike a great impression in people's eyesight. Is what you do, how you live. That is your influence. And when they hear such words as this, and the law, statutes, and judgments, when you're talking and doing about the law, statutes, and judgment, then they are recognized, even if they don't want a part of it, they are recognized, surely this is a wise and understanding people. Why? Because every intelligence recognizes intelligence. And people will recognize that these are natural laws that's good. And with a society like that, but I ain't ready to live that pure. But they're going to recognize it. And some nations will even decide to say, well, if I need to get right, then I know how to get right. So I have a pathway. In order for Israel to be a light into the world. See, sometimes when we read as Israelites, we tend to be isolating ourselves from the world. But we're not supposed to isolate ourselves. We're supposed to influence ourselves. How can you be a light into the world if no one is only shining for you and no one else can see the beacon? So this is some of the most important aspects of that. And then we, in this particular portion here, we talks about, we get one of the things, where we get one of the major prayers that we talk about in the 5th chapter, in the other chapters here, when it's talk about in the 6th chapter, 4th verse, I'm just move over there, where it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." All right, that is something that's like a national cry. Those that's very traditional in the service. That's usually the first thing you say, in the morning prayers outside of Modeh Ani. And it's the last thing you say before you go to bed, Shema Yisrael. The word Shema also, hearing, which is focused now, 40 years later, Moses come up with this and said, it's more important not so much to see, but to hear, to hearken, to listen, to let it resonate within you. Much is more personal. We find out that the word Shema in the beginning, Shema, the last letter in the word Shema, which is Ayin, and the last letter in the word Echad is a Dalet. So Ayin and Dalet, those two letters, the last letter Shema, and the last letter of the word Echad, which is one, unity, it stands for a witness. So when we constantly say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." Are we saying, we bear witness that God is absolute, there's no other? Then why don't we just say, God is one? Israel, hear, O Israel, God is one. Why say the Lord our God? They're affirming. We make a double affirmation, on it as well, and we know it is only one God that exists. There's no reason to say the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You can say the Lord our God is one. So those are things that we got to pay closer attention. We're not doubting that God is one, but we actually emphasizing that God is a unity and a oneness that's unlike any other, indivisible in a sense. All right, so now, and we recognize God as a God, has various attributes, one God. And the word Shema is used mentioned in this particular century about 19 times, which is very extraordinary. It's something part of it as far as hearing. All right, and then we get the thing about, and what's so important about hearing is this: sometimes we have a failure to communicate about different issues. Sometimes people think they heard something and they talk, and miscommunication, causes a lot of problem. So you got to train yourself to hear accurately in every facet of life. So it's just like the movie, you know, and I heard the rabbi spoke on, you know, Cool Hand Luke, where it said, we have a failure to communicate because most people have arguments for lack of communication. Most people get separated for lack of communication. Most people character be assassinated because of lack of communication. You have a preconceived notion about everyone you see in life because of lack of communication. Your preconceived notion is often more so than not wrong of that individual. So that's why it's important to be able to listen carefully to an individual. You got to be able to talk, you got to hear and interact. And if you're hearing things, that means you're interacting and you're speaking too, you're participating. All right, so we're gonna move just a little bit faster and let's talk about, we got in this area, in this particular sidra, we got a thing about prayer after meals when you eat and be satisfied. The Birkat Amazon, we have that within there. And one of the things is that most of us today, and we know it's instituted by rabbis, but most of us today will pray before we get the meal, but very rarely we remember to pray after the meal. And what makes it so difficult is because you're satisfied. But if you eat and be satisfied, you know, do you forget about God? Or you still remember God? It's easy to remember God in stress. It's easy to remember God in poverty. But it's very hard to remember the Creator in a blissful moment. So that's just something to consider as we go on. So now I'm gonna go to the book of Isaiah. Like I said, I'm gonna be pretty brief today, but I'm gonna touch on some other stuff before we go into the next portion of Ekhev next week. So I just gloss over a couple key points that I find key in this particular opening of the Sidra. And we'll go to Isaiah, the 40th chapter of Isaiah. And we're going to be taking it from the 40th chapter, the first verse in the book of Isaiah. And like I said, Shabbat last week was called Shabbat Nakamu, which is Shabbat of comfort. And it comes from this particular first word in the book of Isaiah. All right, so I'll be reading that particular portion of Isaiah, Nakamu, which is comfort, So just give me a moment. All right, so now, okay, it says, comfort ye, my people, saith the God. Bid Jerusalem, take heart, and proclaim unto her that her time of service is accomplished, that her guilt is paid off, that she had received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. Now, what do you mean by double for all your sins? Normally, if a thief stole certain items, and the certain items that, it's found in their hands, but, according to certain laws, and it depends on the item, then they pay double, But why are we paying double for sin? If I sin, then I should just pay for my sin. So what do they mean by double? And if my ancestor sinned, then shouldn't they be paying for it? Suppose my ancestor died in his sin, but the sin is still there. So when they say my people pay double for their sin, there's a lot of concepts that could be brought out. So it's the thing to question, what do they mean by double? I'm out my land already, and I'm taken to a foreign land as a slave already. And my God won't even save me right now already. So, and I got to take these lashes and everything already. So you say, well, does that sound more than double, or is it still double? So what do we mean by double? And then we read that the soul that sinned, it shall die. Every man, should pay for their own sin. So what is it, the idea and concept that my ancestors did something, my fathers did something, and I still got to inherit some of that? Well, it's a compiled situation. When I say a compiled situation, I use the analogy, if somebody made a mess in your living room, okay, and they left, and you come in your living room and you make a mess in that same living room, all right, then finally you say, oh man, I'm tired of looking at this, I got to clean it up. You just can't clean up your mess in order to clean the living room. You got to clean up the other individual's mess as well, because you left that there without making a change. You practice the exact same thing as the prior individual with the mess. So saying we pay double for our sins, but the Creator let you know that He's rescuing. He's trying to give us some kind of comfort here through the prophet Isaiah. Now, before that, Isaiah was telling us all the stuff that we did wrong, everything that would come upon us, all the problems. But now, and we get to the third verse, it says, in Isaiah 40, chapter 3rd verse.
Verse 3, it reads, Hark, one calleth, clear ye in the wilderness the way of Yahweh, make plain in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be lifted up, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the rugged shall be made level, and the rough places a plain.
Hold it right there. Right then and there, when you're traveling, if people are going to travel, you don't want to have to keep going downhill or uphill. You want to travel on level, smooth ground. So, those that go to the gyms, you got these stairs that you climbing up and up and up, and then you got this elliptical thing where you might be going backwards, almost like you're going in a valley. So the Creator saying, that those elements there, He's gonna make everything smooth for us with no obstacles, where we could reach our destination without being tired. Because when you're traveling, you want a smooth travel. Some of us can't ride past 2 hours anywhere in our vehicle. They say, man, I'm tired already, and just started the trip. And those that live maybe in the New York area where it's 25 miles an hour, you could spend just 40 minutes to an hour just to go 7 miles. The 7 miles, you can spend 40 minutes to an hour just to go 7 miles. So the Creator saying that all this stuff will be made, clear out the way, in other words, and everything will be smooth, and say make plain in the desert. So you're going through some wilderness or rough terrain and dry area. All right. And then it goes on to say in the 5th verse.
Verse 5, and the glory of Yahweh shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of Yahweh has spoken it.
All right, hold it right there. So that means that the Creator gonna make Himself, His glory known to everybody, and everybody gonna see that this is God doing this. This ain't the people doing this on their own. They're gonna see some strange wonders and everything like that. So in other words, when Isaiah's talking about the northern kingdom going into captivity, Judah going into the Babylonian captivity, and when Judah goes into captivity, and it goes into the captivity after Isaiah had already been off the scene. So, because Isaiah lived during the northern kingdom exile, but he didn't make it to the length of the Babylonian exile, which was 100 some odd years later. So now it's saying, but the exile is coming. So this more so is comfort twice. When you say comfort twice, you're thinking about the 10 tribes that leaving early. You're talking about the 10 tribes, the other 2 tribes, Judah, Benjamin, and some Levites as well. But then the redundancy of comfort and redundancy of doubling for their sins, all that let you know right then and there that it's in relationship. And that's one of the things about prophecy, that a lot of times we use hindsight to think about foresight. But when it's talking about comfort, the comfort itself that Isaiah is given is in the present tense and not in the future tense. That means that anytime you go through trials and tribulations and dramas in life, that the Creator, if you turn to the Creator, you can find comfort in Him, no matter what you're going through. So you figure He would speak to the future when He say comfort ye. But the word comfort in the opening of this particular chapter is talking to people in the presence. When He say say to the people, that's the saying. It's in the present tense. All right, so we're gonna pick it up from the
Verse
6
reads, Hark, one saith, proclaim, and he saith, what shall I proclaim? All flesh is grass, and all the goodliness thereof is as the flower of the field. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, because the breath of Yahweh bloweth upon it. Surely the people is grass.
Now, this is a reference to the nations, the outside nations, not just it's not directed to Israel, because Israel's being comforted. So letting you know that right then and there that the Creator raise up nations and bring down nations. And how we gonna find out that's really talking about outside nations when we go further into this particular chapter, about the people that pretty much glory within themselves and making gods that are not gods. So this is one of the things where they say we like grass, and then you know that the Creator extinguishes and whoever He wants in this particular chapter. But just go a little further, we're gonna find out some other things.
Verse 8. It reads, the grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever.
Okay.
O thou that telleth good tidings to Zion, get thee up into the high mountain, O thou that telleth good tidings to Jerusalem, lift up thy voice with strength. Lift it up, be not afraid. Say unto the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold, Yahweh God, behold, Adonai Yahweh will come as a mighty one, and his arm will rule for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his recompense before him.
Okay, I'll wait there before we go to the 11th verse. When it gets in, after we said all this here stuff here, talking about good tidings, and used poetic names, Zion, the poetic name is Jerusalem as a whole. He said, lift up thy voice with strength. Lift it up, be not afraid. Say unto the cities of Yehudah, behold your God. So it's unto the prophet, they give him some kind of hope, and not only that, but it says, behold, the mighty one will come as a mighty one. I mean, the Lord God will come as a mighty one. Now, this phrase here, the Lord thy God will come as a mighty one. That's actually a reaffirmation, and it's used more so with Moses in the actual Sidra itself. And it says his arms will rule for him, and behold, his reward is with him. That means that we don't have the Creator don't have to get it from any place else. The Creator don't lack for anything. So that means right then and there, when the Creator is lifting you up and carrying you forward, that means right then and there that you got everything coming from Him directly. And not saying, well, I go over there and get it, go over here to get it, or I pay you later. Saying our rescue, our deliverance, and reward is all in one shot coming from the Creator. But as we go ahead, we're going to get some other ideas and concepts of the Creator too. 11th verse.
Verse 11 reads, even as a shepherd that feedeth his flock, that gathereth the lambs in his arm, and carrieth them in his bosom, and gently leadeth those that give suck, who have measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out heaven with the span, and comprehendeth the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance.
All right, let's stop right there. All right, before we talk about some of the things that the God we serve, what He did, because the Bang Theory is out, and the prophet, the Bang Theory is out. So why are you going to tell about the power and the glory and the majesty of the Creator to a people that already know the Creator, because some people didn't know the Creator. Some people, and it's more so to the heathens, but Israel was basically still caught up in a lot of idolatry and ascribing a lot of things to idols and stuff like that. So we're going to see further on in this particular chapter. But when it says, measure the waters in the hollow of his hand and mete out the heavens with a span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in measure, and weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in balance. Heavy mountains is on sturdier ground. Lighter mountains is on more fragile ground. So the tallest mountain is going to be on real sturdy ground. That's number one. And when they talk about the earth is really divided in three areas. You're talking about water, inhabited area, and then you have desert. Basically, those are three main quality areas of the planet, of the earth itself. And it said everything there is strong, and measured out and meted out by the Creator. It's not by accident. So we don't read even in foreign literature, when they say they God made so and so, they God made that, such and such made this, they don't say he calculated anything. It didn't say he even calculated. So we got a God that not only does things, but he's a calculating God. But when you go to other doctrines prior to this time, prior to Israel, you mean, well, they might describe, oh, so-and-so made the sun, such and such did such and such. But it's not a calculating like I say, all right, I'm gonna throw this up. Okay, I can use that. But everything the Creator does is itemized like an accountant and like an architect, and real precision. But let's go on a little bit further and see what we got here. 13.
Verse 13. Yeah. It reads, who have meted out the spirit of Yehovah, or who was his counselor that he might instruct him?
All right, hold it right there. All right, I'm going to go one more.
With whom
14.
Took he counsel, and who instructed him, and taught him in the path of the right, and taught him knowledge, and made him to know the way of discernment. Okay, now, the reason I have to go further is this, because who have meted out the spirit of the Lord. We read in the beginning of Genesis, and that's why I want to go back. Going back to the Genesis story, so to speak, and to talk about the spirit of the Creator moved upon the face of the waters. But it's his spirit that moved upon the face of the water. Not saying that's all God himself, he just, but that's the highest thing we could think of right now in our own mental finite mind. But one of the things he says, with whom took he counsel, and who instructed him? All right. Or go line up, say, or who was his counselor that he might instruct, that he might instruct him. So in other words, who give God's wisdom? Who give God's counsel? And this is an attack on the Genesis story of around Genesis 2. Well, 1 and 26, I think 1 and 26, where it says, let us make man, and when people run with that, said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. And so people was read Isaiah and said, well, he had to have some counsel with somebody, somebody must have, but when we read the verse, this is a critique on that verse. This particular chapter, verses that we're reading now, is a critique on the Genesis story when people say, well, somebody else had hands in this and all that kind of stuff. What we find here is that in the basic sense, whose idea was to make man? You didn't read what God said, should we make anything else? So even if you don't understand the literacy of the Hebrew and what happens in Genesis in the singular, it was the Creator alone that's come up with the thing where I'm gonna make a man.
that was the issue. That was the agenda. You know. So when you say I'm gonna do something, say let us work together on this. You know, it's it's something. Even if you say, well, let's work together on my project. The project is mine. The idea is mine. So a lot of times people will think that everybody else suggested to God about what he should do in this world and suggested to God how it should be, you know, and they had to huddle on it. When it says, let us make man in our image, we find out that it was only made in the image of one, the creator. And what that image is a different, you know, like I said, I spoke on it when we talked about Genesis. And also that he did it alone himself. And since God made man, ever since then, man been making gods. But let's go further, and we're gonna find more about that in this area. And then say, you know, but when they talk about and to know the way of discernment, all right. So wisdom, even in Proverbs, said, you know, that it was made by the Creator. So if wisdom in the 8th Proverbs let you know that she had a beginning and she didn't make herself, that the Creator made wisdom, made knowledge, made understanding, then that means he didn't need that to work with. And that's the kind of God we talk about, and that's the kind of God we serve. Because if wisdom had to be made by God, then what was the Creator working with before wisdom got on the scene? And wisdom, then all it did was say, I played, according to the Proverbs. I played around in the things that was already made, things that I didn't have anything to do with. I played with. So, and wisdom had a desire. So when we look at those things there, when we talk about wisdom or knowledge, understanding, we serve a God that supersedes anything that we can conceive of. When we say light travel at 186,000 miles per second, then when we look at a star and they say we're looking at stars as it was, but not as it is, then how can we even begin to say we could face God and see him for what he is and comprehend him to the fullest? But yet we're told to know God. So that's something to discuss. Let's go on a little further from
Verse
15
15
yes.
reads, Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket and are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, the isles are as a mote in the weight, and Lebanon is not sufficient fuel, nor the beasts thereof sufficient for burnt offerings. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are counted by him as things of naught and vanity.
Hold on, right there. Dust could be blown around. So in other words, the dwarf and stuff, the Creator said the rest of the nation like dust to me. So he's saying, you one as Israelites is precious to him. You the one doing certain things. And yet we're not the greatest. Because we find out in the actual Sidra, if you read straight on through, those that read straight on through with Echanan, that we was the least of the nations. Our greatness was only in spirituality. That was our greatness, you know, and what we're supposed to live by. All right, let's go continue. To whom?
Verse 18 reads, To whom then will ye liken God, or what likeness will ye compare unto him? The image perchance which the craftsman have melted, and the goldsmith spread over with gold, the silversmith casting silver chains. A home oak is set apart. He chooseth a tree that will not rot. He seeketh unto him a cunning craftsman to set up an image that shall not be moved.
Hold it right there. Hold it right there. The guy that worships the idol, looking for somebody smarter than him to build him a god. Ain't that something? You know, you get all the idols together, but you ain't got the skill sometimes. And you outsource it to somebody else. They had the better skill than you. And then they frame it the way they might imagine it and what they think you told them. And you worship that item. The goldsmith, everybody ain't a carpenter, a sculptor, and a metalsmith all at once. Very few people gonna have all those three skills, or a potter, you know. So that means you outsourcing your belief system to somebody else that's smarter than you already, and yet you're gonna say, I'm praying to the thing he produced. But let's go a little bit further.
Verse 21, it reads, Know ye not, hear ye not, have it not been told you from the beginning? Have ye not understood the foundations of the earth? It is he that sitteth above the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretch out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. That
before we go any further. It said, men became stupid concerning the Creator. Man already knew that there was a God. Man already knew that there was one God. Adam didn't have no idea, concept of talking about there's more than one God. He said the voice of God. You know, I heard the voice of God. You know, I heard your voice. Nobody else's voice. That's unique. Walking in the cool of the day. You know, and I hear myself. Even the first murderer, the first question that was ever asked by man was an insulting question. Am I my brother's keeper? Which was Cain. But yet, he didn't have no other gods at that time. He the first one to try to offer up a sacrifice to the God, not a bunch of gods. Even though it wasn't the best, but he did. He was the first one motivated to bring up an offering, and just as his brother outdid him. Hence the word Hebel, which means vanity. You shine a little bit better. But let's go a little bit further. All right, pick it up from the 23rd.
Verse 23 reads, That bringeth princes to nothing, he maketh the judges of the earth as a thing of naught. Scarce are they planted, scarce are they scarce. Are they planted, scarce are they sown. Scarce have their stock taken root in the earth. When he bloweth upon them, they wither, and the whirlwind taketh them away as stubble. To whom then will you liken me that I shall be equal, saith Yehovah? Lift up
The Creator asking that question. Say, you know, if he asked the question, that means he don't see nobody that could do, you know what I mean, that in himself. So when God asks the question, God already has the answer. And he asking you, can you come up with somebody that could do the stuff I do? I'm throwing out some resume, and I'm throwing out also some of your stupidity. So not only I'm giving my resume, I'm exploiting your stupidity and what your concept is of a God. Now that's tough, you know what I mean? But that's to show Israel itself that it's not vain to serve the Creator. That's what it is. So remember, it's about comforting Israel, because we already, you know, go through trials and tribulation and captivity, and other nations going to look at us like we're inferior because we're outside of our land. But like I said, Israel is a people without a land, a nation without a land. We became a nation without that. Other people need land to be a nation. So that's what makes us so unique, because of our laws, statutes, and judgment. I'm going to finish up a couple more verses.
6. It reads, Lift up your eyes on high and see, who have created these? He that bringeth out their host by number. He calleth them.
I'm going to count. I'm going to count. Go ahead. And he calleth what?
He calleth them all by name, by the greatness of his might. And for that he is strong in power, not one faileth. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. So that means right there and there, the comfort is that if you pray to this God, what Isaiah saying was not a God, the best way for us to describe the Creator, the best way and the strongest way we could describe the Creator is recognizing what is, and also saying what, you know, he's not. You know, because when we started comparing, we try to say he's not all that. You know, so that's one of the great things about this way of life, you know, and about us that observe, you know, Torah, us that try to prepare ourselves for comfort for this 7 weeks that's coming up. Well, 6 more weeks until we reach, you know, that time of Yom Kippur, where we actually could make an atonement for our sins, and the gates of mercy be opened up, as well as, you know, the courthouse, you know. And so what we learn is that the God we have, no matter in good times that we go through or the bad times we go through, that we could find comfort in that God. And that's what the prophet is letting us know. Because when later on, when you read about Isaiah's idea of the future, we didn't reach that yet. They didn't build the temple by all the scales that Ezekiel said in his vision. And when we came back from Babylon, it was only Judah, Benjamin, and part of the, of the tribes of Levi, the Kohanim and stuff like that. So what about the other 10 tribes and some of the Kohanim that was with them? So, and it's about all Israel coming back in the final analogy. So as we move forward and try to find comfort, you know, in the Creator, we got to try to comfort one another. And you know, and that's one of the things that we got to work on stronger. So with that, one of the things I like to say before I leave off is that the best way to comfort and recognize the greatness of another individual is that when you think about the Tower of Babel, I was telling a few people a while back that when they talk about how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity, and then it's talk about the precious ornament that ran down the bed, Aaron's bed, it went down to the skirts of his garment, like the dew of Hermon. You know, the final thing in that 133rd Psalm is that the Creator said there, you know, he commanded a blessing. So why is it that he commanded a blessing, not on the oil, not necessarily on Aharon, not on the dew, but on unity? Because those guys that built the Tower of Babel were so united that they say, let us go ahead and build us a tower, make us a name, and build us a tower, because we don't want to be scattered. The purpose of the tower is that's God, just in case God scatter us, and I don't want to be separated from one another, you know. And like they did before the flood, I want to stay with my family. So therefore, we're gonna make a name for ourselves and build a tower, and going against the Creator's will. It was so much so that unity was so tight, so strong, that the Creator didn't send the angels down and destroy them like they did Sodom and Gomorrah years ago in the other 3 cities. He came down himself, and he didn't destroy anyone. All he did was confound the language, because that's how beautiful, how strong unity is that when you unite yourselves together, you know, in a love and a care for one another, that the Creator came down and he recognized the unity so strong that he just said, okay, I'm gonna make it where they can't communicate. Hear, Israel, the failure of communication. And it's the failure to communicate with one another that tends to separate us all the time. And even one more, you didn't read where he destroyed the tower. They left off from building the tower. So that's let you know the power of unity if we could get together. So it's not in our power to unite, but it's definitely in our power to care and love and show comfort, you know, to one another. With that, I say any mistakes by my own, and I say Shalom Aleichem and Shabbat Shalom. Amen.
By Nasik, thank you for your time and for your effort. Have a blessed Shabbat, and may the Most High God be with you.
Allah bless. Shalom.
Shalom.